Sabes que las cosas están mal para Donald Trump cuando incluso en Fox están hablando del tema. Y esto es exactamente lo que vimos ayer cuando el medio propagandístico Fox detalló qué tan rápido podría desmoronarse la agenda de Donald Trump, ya que se está enfrentando a un escrutinio cada vez mayor por parte de los republicanos dentro del Senado. Vamos a hablar de esto y de cómo Donald Trump se está desmoronando durante todo este video. Pero antes de esto quiero mostrarte a una gran demócrata explicando qué tan catastrófico puede ser este proyecto de ley. Ella se llama Elizabeth Warren y me encantaría que veas este clip.
And Democrats believe that no grandma should be pushed out of her nursing home so that Elon Musk can take a subsidized rocket ship ride to Mars. It doesn't have to be this way. What if, instead of tax breaks for billionaires, we make the rich pay their fair share? What if, instead of slashing health care for our kids, we make it possible for every American to see a doctor when they're sick without breaking the bank? And what if, instead of giving big oil more giant handouts, we make universal child care a reality for families all across this country? We can tax the rich. Damn it, if Jeff Bezos can afford to rent Venice for $50 million for his wedding, he can afford to pitch in his fair share on taxes so the next kid has a chance to make it big, and the kid after that, and the kid after that. We can make life better for working people. We can make it easier, not harder. We can lower costs for families, not jack them up even more like this bill does. We can put families first, not billionaires and billionaire corporations. Democrats believe this. Democrats are willing to fight for this. We will vote no on this awful bill. And for kids like Vivian, for seniors in nursing homes, for families who rely on home health aides, and for the millions more Americans that this bill will hurt, I urge my Republican colleagues, grow a spine and vote no.
Es claro el daño generacional que este proyecto de ley causaría. Y por supuesto, hemos hablado en este canal tanto de estos recortes del Medicaid que dejarían a millones de estadounidenses sin cobertura médica. Pero no se queda ahí, esto se extiende incluso más allá, llegando al punto del cierre masivo de hospitales rurales. Es más, ni siquiera se limitan a hospitales rurales, sino que hospitales como tal dentro de todo el país. Esa es la razón por la cual republicanos que anteriormente apoyaban fervientemente a Donald Trump se están manifestando en contra de este proyecto de ley de Donald. Y su opinión podría estar empujando a más de un conservador. O sea, me refiero que podría estar impulsando a más republicanos a hacer lo mismo. Así que la razón por la cual vimos que este proyecto de ley fue retrasado hace 2 noches podría ser muy preocupante para Donald Trump. Y antes de que vayamos con Peter Doocy explicando sobre esto, quiero empezar con el senador republicano Tillis.
Between the state-directed payments and the cuts scheduled in this bill, there's a reduction of state-directed payments. And then there's the reduction of the provider tax. They can't find a hole in my estimate. So what they told me is that, yeah, it's rough, but North Carolina's used the system, they're going to have to make it work. All right. So what do I tell 663,000 people in 2 years or 3 years when President Trump breaks his promise by pushing them off of Medicaid because the funding's not there anymore, guys? I think when the White House, senators advising the president, are not telling him that the effect of this bill is to break a promise. And you know, the last time I saw a promise broken around health care, with respect to my friends on the other side of the aisle, it's when somebody said, if you like your health care, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. We found out that wasn't true. That made me the second Republican Speaker of the House since the Civil War, ladies and gentlemen, because we betrayed the promise to the American people.
Tienes a republicanos oponiéndose a esto. Tienes a John Thune aterrorizado de llevar esto a votación, porque ellos saben lo malo que puede llegar a ser. Y eso fue justamente lo que fue analizado sorprendentemente por Peter Doocy, en la cual advierte que si la oposición de Donald Trump sigue creciendo, podría poner en riesgo su presidencia. Así que mira este clip.
But if they cannot get this done, that's going to be a big problem here at the White House because President Trump stuffed so many different things that he promised he was going to do in the campaign into this bill, and he has been trusting Mike Johnson and John Thune to get it done. If they can't, it's going to take a really, really long time for them to go individual item by individual item and fight it out over each thing to try to get the Trump agenda passed. Back to you.
Yeah, I just, in the back of his head, John Thune must be saying, this is why I want to do 2 bills.
Donald Trump llama a esto el gran y hermoso proyecto de ley, lo cual es mentira porque es un terrible y horripilante proyecto de ley. Lo único que está haciendo es meter ley tras ley dentro de una bolsa gigante que llama proyecto de ley, aunque a Donald Trump parece que esto no le importa en absoluto. Lo único que está demostrando con este fracasado proyecto de ley es que no le importa realmente gobernar, ya que si no logra aprobar este proyecto de ley, toda su agenda se desmorona completamente, y sería un golpe devastador para Donald Trump. El bloque republicano no logra unirse detrás de nada. Estamos viendo cómo congresistas se retiran en este momento. No dicen que no se van a repostular para una siguiente elección, pero simplemente se están retirando actualmente. Donald Trump se encuentra perdiendo apoyo, perdiendo respaldo, y esto realmente podría significar el fin de su presidencia, porque como tal ya sabemos lo que está pasando con las elecciones de medio término, y por esa misma razón se tiene que seguir difundiendo el mensaje en contra de su agenda. Y Bernie Sanders se encuentra haciendo eso justamente aquí.
Get a $918 billion tax break. That is what the 1% and the wealthy campaign contributors get. So, here's what you get, assuming you're not a billionaire. This bill throws over 16 million people off of the health insurance they have by slashing Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act by over $1.1 trillion. So, $1 trillion in tax breaks for the 1%, $1 trillion in cuts in Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Further, it forces millions of Medicaid recipients to pay a $35 copayment every time they visit a doctor. So what is the impact of all this? What happens when you throw 16 million people off health care, you impose a $35 copayment? Well, what the Yale School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania estimate is that if this reconciliation bill is enacted, and it's unbelievable for me to say this, but this is what they are telling us, this is what they have studied. If this bill goes through and all these healthcare cuts take place, over 50,000 Americans will die unnecessarily each and every year. 50,000 Americans. In other words, this bill is a horrific death sentence for low income and working class Americans. Further, if this legislation is enacted, rural hospitals all over the country that are already struggling would be forced to shut down. It would also make massive cuts to community health centers and nursing homes. In other words, this legislation is the most significant attack on the healthcare needs of the American people in the modern history of our country. So, our healthcare system is broken, it's dysfunctional, and they make it even worse. And that's not all. This bill wipes out nutrition assistance for millions of hungry kids at a time when we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of nearly any major nation on earth. This bill will also make it much harder for working class kids to receive the higher education they need by cutting education by some $350 billion. At a time when the planet is struggling with climate change, heat waves now all over the world, this bill decimates investment in energy efficiency and sustainable energies like wind and solar. If you are concerned about how the United States keeps getting into never-ending wars, this bill makes a bad situation even worse by handing out another $150 billion to the Pentagon, a 15% increase in an already bloated Pentagon budget. Now, I want to applaud all of the Democrats, every single one of them, who strongly oppose this bill. And I want to congratulate 2 Republicans, Senators Paul and Senator Tillis, for voting with the Democrats in opposition to proceeding on this bill. But here is something really interesting and quite telling about where the Republican Party is today. When Senator Tillis of North Carolina indicated that he would vote against the bill, he was lambasted on social media by Trump and he was threatened with a primary. He actually did not do what Trump wanted him to do. Is there anything in this world that is worse than that? Today, Senator Tillis announced that he would not seek re-election. So it is pretty clear to me, and I would hope to every American, that the Republican Party of today does not tolerate any independent thought. One might have believed that members of Congress were elected to represent their constituents, to do what they thought right for their constituents. But that's not what it is in the Republican Party right now. The sole function of Republican members of Congress is just to tell Donald Trump how brilliant he is, how infallible he is, how great he is, put up a statue of him on Mount Rushmore, oh my God. And if any Republican, like Senator Tillis, suggests otherwise, they will be politically destroyed. This is pathetic, and it has all of the hallmarks of the kind of authoritarian society that Trump wants to take us into. Dissent is simply not tolerated anymore within Republican ranks. I don't have to tell anybody that this is an extremely difficult moment in American history. Trump and the oligarchs have unlimited wealth. They have a great deal of power and they want more. But there is something that we have. And we saw that just last week in the recent mayoral primary in New York City. So what you had is one candidate supported by all of the big money interest, all of the oligarchs, but you had the other candidate who was supported by ordinary people. And guess who won? The guy, Mr. Mamdani, who was supported by rank and file New Yorkers, won the election. So I think what we can learn from that is that if we stand together and not let Trump and his friends divide us up based on our religion or where we were born or our sexual orientation or the color of our skin, if we stand together, we can beat the oligarchs. And let me tell you, in this moment in history, that is exactly what we've got to do.
Este es el mensaje que se está transmitiendo actualmente en contra de Donald Trump. Y hay que seguir difundiéndolo para que todos lo conozcan y todos sepan lo que realmente está pasando. Y el porqué de que si este proyecto de ley llega a ser aceptado, va a ser un problema muy grande para Estados Unidos. Pero bueno, para mí lo más importante es saber tu opinión al respecto y me encantaría que la pongas en los comentarios. Está de más decirlo, pero si te gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, te va a encantar suscribirte al canal, ya que subo videos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarte diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.